Okay, everyone, welcome to the planning board meeting for October 17th, 2019. First, I'd like to acknowledge that Judith, our chair, is on the phone calling in, so I'll be your acting chairperson for this evening. So I'd like to, we have an agenda before us, and I'd like to see if we can get a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. I think we have to make a, Leslie, do we have to make a roll call for approving the agenda? I know. Okay. All right, and I apologize in advance. We're going to, with each of the votes that we have, we're going to have to call for a roll call, so it might take a little bit of time. What I would like to ask the board to consider, I have a little different idea. For the consent of the minutes, the second ones and the tertiaries, instead of taking an individual roll call, I'd like to see first if there's any items that stand out that you want to discuss, and I'd like to call those separately. And if not, there is one that I will be recusing myself from, and we can take that at the end, and then I will be appointing Nat Lowell as the acting chair while I recuse myself. And that is, it is the second one, 3B Miller Lane. So is there any other items that somebody has a question with or discussion?
For the secondary dwellings, you mean?
And secondary dwellings and also
I had just some questions, at least I did at 3 this morning, on the 12 Lincoln Ave, 28 Eel Point Road, 202 Eel Point Road, and the 10.5 Cherry.
You say that again, 12 Lincoln.
12 Lincoln.
202 Eel Point.
And 28, yep.
Okay. And then the Cherry Street Tertiary.
Right.
Okay,
You want
so
to take those separately?
let's take, we will be removing or taking separately the second dwellings, 3B Miller Lane at the end, 12 Lincoln Ave, 28 Eel Point Road, 202 Eel Point Road, and also in the tertiary 10.5 Cherry Street. Aside from that, can I get a motion?
Make a motion to approve Elm Mix, 4 LLC, 3 Sophie's Way, Roland Voyages, 14 Osprey, 14 South Pasture LLC, Stephen Virtue, 39 Pleasance, Joe Saluti, 174 Cliff, and William, I'm not sure how to pronounce that,
Tolstead.
26 Dashman.
And also the minutes for September 5th.
In the minutes of September 5th and September 9th, continuing the 23rd, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That would be my motion. Second.
Okay, I think we're going to have to take a roll call.
Yep.
David?
Dave Iverson, aye. Matt Lowell, aye.
John Trudell, aye. And Judith?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I think we'll start with, well, I'll be recusing myself, but we'll start with the 3B Miller Lane. And I will be acting, Nat Lowell as acting chair.
Okay.
In a weird place,
So
it's
does
down
anyone have any
low.
questions with staff? Otherwise, I'll accept the motion to endorse.
I thought, excuse me just for a minute,
Okay.
because I could be wrong, but I thought the updated agenda said that was continued.
That's the special permit part.
Okay,
We're
sorry.
continuing the special permit, Campbell.
Okay,
But this is just for the approval of the secondary dwelling, not the residential lot. Correct,
Okay.
Polly?
Correct.
Okay.
okay, super, sorry.
Second lot, it's
Right.
approval of, not dwelling, right? Just
Yes.
a lot.
So, anyone else have any questions on this? Otherwise, I'll accept the motion to endorse.
So moved.
Have a second? Judith. Can she second?
Second?
Yes. All those in favor? No, well, okay, so I'll call
Dave-
roll call, Dave.
Dave Iverson, aye.
Nat Lowell, aye. Hi, Judith.
Judith, aye.
Thank you. So those are the three, Catherine, whoever's
Yep.
keeping the minutes there. Okay. Okay, John, where'd you go?
Come back, John.
Where is he? There you are. Okay. I don't think that was one you had to escape the room, was it?
Short and sweet.
All right, so we'll start out with the, John comes back, we'll start out with the first one.
12, Lincoln Ave.
Okay.
Jennifer Eckert.
Yeah, I just have several questions about it, on the application. First of all, are they, should I be assuming they're taking the existing structure down in order to put in
Looks that way.
new structures?
Historic, isn't it? There?
1920s.
Yeah, that's not bad down.
It's
Well,
probably
when I
been-
looked on their plan,
Is it?
Hey, look on the plans. It does not
It's
look like
coming
it's
down.
staying.
They're in front of the HTC.
it,
It's actually, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If I may, so this is actually an application that, I was,
Oh, maybe
submitted
it's
to,
staying.
I guess Tuesday. It may or may not have been heard, and it was out for, it was in for a, new primary dwelling. And, this is actually a structure, I think, that was, built in the 1960s.
Oh, okay.
This particular one.
This particular one, yeah.
Is this the place that had that crazy paper road thing?
Yes.
It is, isn't it? Okay.
So I don't know the disposition of the final, but just to clarify what's happening on the lot.
So it's
Mr. Chairman, I mean, again, these are second dwellings, and the planning board
Yeah.
only jurisdiction is adequacy of access, and they meet the access requirements of the bylaw.
I was gonna say, if that's the only question about the historical significance of the building, I think we should leave that to the HCC to decide. I don't think that's going to affect what we voted on the second.
Right.
it was just a question.
That's
Well, you know, because sometimes I think it's, I think it adds more character to the area if they retain the structure than find a way to put it in our dump. So that's just a thought. But anyway, on the application, it states that they were doing a 2,298 square foot secondary dwelling. But on the plan, it states it's a 1,769
switched
square
around,
foot
don't they?
dwelling, so I was just wondering what the disparity, where that comes in, and which one are they actually going with on that?
I read it as approximate, but until the approval, I guess, with the HCC
So
of
it's-
the building.
Are you talking about the differential, or are you talking
Ground
about?
cover versus.
No, it's
entire
just where, what it was on the application.
So,
It's exactly
It
what
says,
it is.
please
Yeah.
provide a brief description of the proposed secondary dwelling, or
Ground
second
cover,
dwelling.
not square
New
footage.
2,290 square foot second dwelling with full finished basement. And on the plan, it has a smaller one. Now, I'm not opposed to that, I'm just wondering about the
right.
I think it's just showing
consistency
ground
within
cover on
the
the plan.
paperwork, that's really.
Mr. Chairman, we did talk with someone at Emeritus about this, and I believe that the number shown on the plan is the correct number.
The higher of the two.
The lower, 17.
Okay, that's all I
69 or
have right
something.
now in my paperwork, the 1769.
Yeah, this
Going
was,
on
I
the
think,
packet.
I think that's gross square footage. Yeah. Sorry, Meg had her hand in her secondary dwelling review, so I'm not so intimate into these, so I apologize.
So what would the difference be then between a gross and a net?
You're looking at ground cover. Gross is the entire. So,
Okay, I can see I'm not gonna get straightened out on that, but anyway, that was. Just because I think if you're approving something, it should, one of these numbers should be the one that you're looking at,
correct.
That's
The
right,
one that's
I
on the
thought.
plan,
is the one that you're approving?
correct.
Okay,
Okay, so we're approving the 1769,
Correct.
the application on the plan.
Correct.
And we can confirm that with the applicant and make sure that the plan that is signed has the correct number on it, because we don't want any discrepancies when they apply for a building permit. But either way, again, you're looking at access here.
Right.
Any other comments?
No, that was all.
Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to endorse.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. I think we'll do a roll call.
Dave Iverson, aye.
That will lie.
John Trudell, aye. Judith?
Stevens, aye.
Okay. Motion approves 4-0. Unanimously. Next one, 28 Eel Point Road. Ken?
Yeah, so again, I just had a question on the photo, and there's a blue arrow on the photo, and I didn't quite understand what it was pointing to. But I guess if all we can talk about is whether it has access to a road, then the plan,
Can I say why the arrow's there? Because in the
Meg, stand up to the mic, please.
in the
And
GIS,
identify yourself.
Meg Trudell, I'm staff for Plus. In the GIS, when I just create the visuals, you couldn't highlight that particular parcel, so I was notating that is the parcel in question.
so where the lawn is where the
Right.
enlarged building is going?
That's the primary dwelling. That's notated there. I just didn't want confusion since there's lots of other things going on in that area.
Okay.
Any other concerns? Ken?
Apparently none that are appropriate to bring up at a planning meeting.
Okay.
So,
Well, thank you. All right, is there a motion?
Yes, motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Roll call, please.
Dave Iverson, aye.
That will lie.
John Trudell, aye. Judith? Motion has been approved unanimously 4-0. Next one, 2
Yeah, it is.
Eel Point Road.
yes.
Ken, please.
This is Brussels
You
property.
asked about this?
Yes, I did. So
Russell
again,
property.
but, and it refers more to the
Past
plan. It
Warren's
shows that
Landing.
there are 2 lots here. And my question was, are these lots being combined to be like one lot? And if they're not being combined as one lot, are we creating a non-conforming lot with intrusions over the property line into the second lot? With a proposed secondary dwelling as well as the parking lot, as you can see on this, the plan behind you.
They're merged by common ownership.
But are they going to remain merged?
That's why it's proposed that way, yeah.
So in future, when it's sold as the whole piece? Is that,
Mr. Gasparo's here, and he's the surveyor. Perhaps he could answer these questions for her.
Great.
yeah, thank you.
Art?
For the applicant, Gaspar, as Ms. Backus noted, it's common ownership right now, so if anything was to be done in the future, that would take a different operation to cure the conformity, and whether that could be undone or not, I'd have to defer to an attorney. But as far as the current application before you, it's strictly for converting, getting rid of the second dwelling that's above the garage and making the other structure into a second dwelling.
Right, and so from my small mind, I'm seeing just a small intrusion, and I'm wondering why it wouldn't be appropriate to make just a small shift to ensure that in future it's not a non-conforming.
That structure's already constructed.
Okay, so it's already on the,
Yeah, it's a,
Fine.
but it's not a second dwelling. It doesn't have the kitchen. And the other garage with the studio above it was a permitted second dwelling. So this is a little bit of a flip-flop where they're essentially making modifications to existing structures. Everything that you see on there for structures are existing.
okay.
You will be removing the kitchen?
Yeah.
the
Or
original
they're,
garage
right, they're gonna be
apartment?
going for building permits to exactly to make those changes.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Is there a motion?
Yeah, motion to endorse.
Second.
Made and seconded. Roll call, please.
Dave Iverson, aye.
Matt Roll, aye.
John Trudell, aye. Motion has been approved unanimously.
Thank you.
10 and 10 and a half Cherry Street, please. 10.
Okay, so I'm just confused by the application, I think. I thought we saw this property and already approved that open lot, right? This is a condominium unit,
Yes.
and
I think that was the
this
house
came
next
in and
door.
They turned the existing something into a two-story and then had a studio.
This, yes, you did see it. They got a special permit, which was actually included as reference in your application. So the condo, it's all one property, but one's a primary, one's a secondary, and they got approval through that special permit for the tertiary, except they needed to actually come in with the actual tertiary approval application, which was omitted in the original approval. So this is just, it should have been supplemented with, but it wasn't. So that's just
Okay.
more or less kind of
And the main
housekeeping.
reason I was asking is because they go from a tertiary dwelling and turning a studio into one, and I'm like, well, did we approve a studio? And now they're, in the spring or fall of last year, and now they're coming in to turn the studio into a tertiary. Do you see what I mean? So I'm just a little confused by the use of the two.
Right. They're not exceeding their density at all. They're doing what they
It's still
are allowed.
close to the 650 square feet.
Correct.
Carrier space or less.
And the special permit was more or less for the differential between the two.
And then the second
Originally.
question I had, and this is just obviously because I wonder about things. I thought in the annual town meeting, didn't this area go to commercial neighborhood? Didn't this go to CN?
That was along the road, wasn't it, along Pleasant Street, I believe?
I think
Along
In that
Williams
area by the Boys Club housing?
Oh, maybe that was
Like that,
Williams
Williams
Lane and
Lane,
not
yeah.
Cherry Street. Okay.
Yeah.
we did propose some rezonings in this area that we didn't advance, so that may be.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Yes, motion to approve the tertiary for staff recommendation.
Second.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Roll call, please.
Dave Iverson, aye.
Matt Roll, aye.
John Trudell, aye. Judith? Motion carries unanimously, 4-0. And now we're at the public hearings, just for notification, we are continuing 5719 5 Gray Avenue, continuing 5819 58 Pochick Ave, continuing 63-19 Westmore, continuing 6419 Great Harbor Yacht Club, continuing 6519 3B Miller Lane, and they are all being continued to the November 15th, 2019 meeting. Next, we are on Ackermuck Way. Matt, I believe you're going to go. Yep.
You do, you need 3 regular voting members.
And, he should be here. He didn't message me. He had a tree fall on his car, so he's. I know, unbelievable. It wasn't just his, so.
He wasn't in it.
Can
but
I,
he should be coming, so.
Leslie, could I ask to have the next two moved to the, where we can hold 5519 first and move that until we hear it, if Fritz is going to be here.
Yeah, I'm just taking a quick count of who's here. We have Judith on the phone. Sorry, Judith, I forgot you, you were on there. Yeah, I think holding the Lauren Brock applications, unless Sarah wants to move forward with less than a full board. Okay. Well, you need 3 voting members, and you'll only have 3. You have exactly 3.
We have 3 with Judith on the phone, yes.
Okay, so you want to go ahead?
Why don't we go ahead with the next application, skip us one, see if he makes it.
Prior session, this was a challenging one, and I would suggest that we wait and defer it till later in the meeting, it was suggested.
Okay. We have all neighborhood, we're all happy now, so.
Okay, I mean,
Well, Sarah, I'll leave it to you. You know the situation we're down. We have 3.
Wait and see if he gets here.
Okay.
You know what, here's the problem. I have these abutters who are here now to support me. I don't want to inconvenience them by putting it off till
No
later.
votes, so they should be fine. They don't have to
I have a dinner reservation.
So I
I'm
don't
fine
wanna
to continue and to go
let's
with
wait
it.
a little bit and see if he gets here.
Okay. Let's take the next 2 and see where we stand with Fritz. I know it's an odd situation, and unfortunately, Mother Nature took over. So, thank you all for your patience. We'll skip over to 55-19, Kevin Bates and Carol Black for 28 Norwood Street. It's a government lot. Is there anyone here for the applicant?
all right. So it looks like no one's here. This is a special permit for, is there someone here? Oh,
Oh, would you like to come for it?
You don't have to.
You don't have to. Okay.
all right.
It's a step, yeah.
So
Have
it-
a plate.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is a secondary lot special permit application. It meets all of the standards for the special permit. The conditions drafted by staff are in your packet, and we recommend approval in accordance with those recommendations.
Well, I need to activate,
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
Just in the order that I see, to my right, Stephen, I'll be activating you for this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there any discussion from the board?
Make a motion to close.
Did you open the public hearing?
No, I did not, okay, well. All right, sorry. I'd like to open a hearing. Is there anyone that'd like to say something? Okay,
Make a motion to close.
is there a second? All those in favor of closing the public meeting? Do you have to have a roll call for this as well?
You do.
Okay, roll call.
Apple, aye.
John Trudell, aye.
Judith, aye.
Okay, is there a motion on the table now?
Make a motion to endorse approve the secondary lot.
Second? Second. Stephen seconds. All those in favor, we have to have a roll call.
Dave Iverson, aye.
Matt Lowell, aye.
John Trudell, aye.
Stephen Wiljohn.
And Judith, aye. Okay. That carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you very much. And welcome, Fritz. Thank you. No, understandable.
Not my car.
And if you'd like to, Sarah, we'll go back to yours. So this is 8385 Ackermuck Way. Matt, I believe you are recusing from this?
Oh, we, it's Fritz here?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even see him. Okay, beautiful. Yes, I will, okay.
We are on page
This ain't gonna
2,
take long, buddy.
and we're gonna start with Ackermuck. We just skipped those 2. We did this one. Yeah. So we're on page 2.
Okay, Sarah, or for the applicant?
Good evening, Dan Malloy, Attorney Sarah Alger for the applicants. So we were here last time, made the presentation to the board. It's a rear lot subdivision of basically a modification of a previously approved definitive plan. At the last hearing, there was a lot of input from abutters on the subdivision, on impacts, on density. Since that meeting, there has been a lot of discussions with all of the abutters, and I believe I can say that we've all come to terms with agreements on what we're all willing to do and not do. And I'll just go over that with the board and see if there's any additional questions on that. So what's come to terms is the property, we've talked to the abutters and are willing to restrict the property to 3 dwellings instead of 4, consisting of 2 primaries and 1 secondary. So the maximum density, so still 2 lots, but taking away 1 secondary. So you have 2 primaries and one secondary on the property. And eliminating the tertiaries entirely. So a maximum of 3 dwelling units. We've also talked to another abutter on, which abuts us, which wasn't at the public hearing, but did come up in discussions outside the public hearing, abuts us on the back side. I'll just, if I can highlight it up here, the abutter that owns these 2 pieces here approached us outside the meeting with concerns on screening on this side. We've agreed with them to maintain screening in the building setback within our property line on that side that abuts their property. And we have an email, I believe there's an email in the file that corroborates that that is agreed to. And lastly, we've also, I've had multiple discussions with Mr. Lowell regarding trees and vegetation on his property line on this side right here. We've both gone out there. He's marked the trees he was concerned about, which are right on the property line. And I've marked several trees on our property in here, which I indicated would have to come down to build our driveway, which he was fine with. So he's, essentially the trees he's concerned with are on the property line. We're not going to touch them. We've agreed to him on that as well. So in terms of the abutter concerns, I think some people here tonight which can probably agree with what I'm stating. So I think from the neighborhood concerns, we've addressed what everybody's brought up. And if I recall with the board, that was the biggest issue in front of the board in terms of what to do with this at the last hearing. The other questions that could come up, some of the proposed conditions that are in the staff report, there's only a couple of those, or maybe one of those that were a concern to us, which we're not in favor of, which was a shared driveway. Like I said, at the time of the meeting, the issue with the shared driveway, a lot of that was vegetation, cutting down in trees, which Mr. Lowell was opposed to. Since we have met with him and indicated what trees are staying and going, he no longer objects to that. So I'd like to request that we don't have to do a shared driveway for the rear lot. I believe that is everything.
Okay, before I open up to the public, anybody on the board have any comments?
I just have a quick question. In terms of Mr. Lowell's trees that were marked and the removal of the other trees in order to make way for the driveway, is there any mitigation you're considering to ensure that the root systems of the trees that Mr. Lowell is concerned about remain as undisturbed as possible? You know, just because you'd hate to have him lose his trees after agreeing to this.
We can certainly, maybe you could consider a condition requiring those trees be protected. We're only talking construction of a driveway, so we're not going to be doing major excavations that would in any way alter the tree roots. What's there now from an elevation standpoint, other than removing some topsoil and putting some gravel in, that's all that would have to happen for a driveway. So there's no reason for us to even get close to those roots, but certainly we can certainly propose some type of required tree protection to ensure we don't get near them.
Anyone else on the board? Okay, this is a public hearing. I'd like to open it up to the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Yes, Mr. Reed. Please identify yourself, as always.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, Mr. Acting Chair and members of the board, Attorney Arthur Reed for the record. As you know, at the last meeting, I represented certain abutters, the Mortons, who are direct abutters, and the Crowleys, who are farther down Accomuck Lane toward New Lane, with regard to the concerns we had about the intensity of the subdivision and other related issues. I want to thank the acting chair, Mr. Trudell, for the suggestion that he made at the last meeting that the parties ought to talk. And as a result of that, Sarah and I have talked, and we've come up with a settlement which may not make everybody totally happy, but the best settlement is supposed to be the one where everybody is just a little bit unhappy with the result, and that's where we are. I think this is an excellent result, seriously, from everybody's standpoint. Once again, my clients no longer object and support the application, provided, once again, that it comes out with the conditions that Mr. Malloy set forth as being the changes we're making, specifically that there be a total of no more than 3 dwellings on the 2 lots, one being able to have a primary and a secondary, and the other being able to just have the primary. We don't care which is which as far as that's concerned, and with no limitation on any other kinds of structures or dimensions other than as required under zoning. And again, I want to thank the board for their receiving our input at the last meeting, and to thank Sarah and her client for agreeing to this resolution.
Great, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Anyone else in the audience? I see Mr. Lowell that just walked in. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Andy Lowell, 4 New Lane, 5 Accomuck. Directly after your last meeting, I met with Ms. Brock a couple of times, and we've resolved our differences. I'm perfectly aware of what is allowed, what is not allowed, and what else has been already subdivided and developed in the neighborhood. We're pleased with what she's doing. As far as what my concern would be for future development, certainly, and how it affects the roadway. I'd like there still to be a notice condition in here that any future development that requires more sewer flowage, that I be notified specifically, considering the sewer line is still considered my own private line. Other than that, as far as the separation between us with vegetation, we've come to an agreement on that, and there's really nothing else that I have an issue with.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else in the audience? Okay, is there a motion to close the?
Close the public. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Do we need to have a roll
Roll
call?
call for that.
Dave Iverson, aye.
John Trudell, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
Stephen Welch, aye.
Jim Flager, aye.
Aye. And that, okay, now.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
that was just a subdivision, so no alternates.
okay, no.
Oh,
Yeah, but on the next application,
Great.
Wasn't
Thanks
that
anyway,
just
Stephen.
closing the public hearing? No.
Not a special permit.
I didn't hear me say anything.
I must have imagined it.
Okay, just to go over what I believe was agreed on, to restrict both properties to have a total of 3 dwellings, being 2 primary and 1 secondary, eliminate the tertiary, maintain screening within the setback to the abutter in the rear on the right, and also to agree to maintain and with Andrew Lowell's property, the abutter, maintain the screening there and any kind of tree removal. There's to be no shared driveway, and as Andy had said, since he does own the sewer, to be notified if there are any future development other than what we're discussing right now. Does that sound approximately correct?
No commercial activity in there somewhere too, I think.
I would just have a question on the
Sure.
last one. Is, so on the last one, just so it's clear, who notifies whom?
Well, funding member, is that something that we can add, Leslie?
That is an interesting condition. I mean, you have to remember that these are enforceable through zoning, so I'm not usually supportive of conditions that result in some sort of zoning violation.
Would you have to get notified in order to tap into the sewer anyway, since it is a private line?
I'm not sure what the DPW process would be on that, but I don't think that's a good idea to include that in your decision.
Okay. I'd like to strike that last sentence. So that is what I think is the motion that's going to be made. Is there anyone looking to move that motion?
So moved. Do we have any other things?
I think there's residential use only, maybe we could add in there. I think that was one of the conditions staff maybe put in there.
There were other conditions in the,
Would you like to go through those, Chris?
are we on 5419 or the other one?
8385.
Oh, so, yeah, hang on. Oh, so maybe there aren't.
Yeah.
Just one moment. So this is the modification to the condition. Oh, the issue of the, do we need to address the issue of same owner?
I'm sorry, what was that, Fritz?
And there was a note here. Staff recommends discussion of the proposal and reason for the modification, but also point out that condition 3 also requires the owner of Lot F should be the same owner as Lot G roadway and shall be responsible for roadway improvements. Is there any modification? Do we need to make a modification to that?
Sarah, will that go away on the next application? No?
No, we'll either have to have one of the lots own it or have a homeowners association between the two lots.
To maintain Lot G. So the homeowners association.
Which would you prefer? I mean, the board's sort of gotten away from homeowners associations for 2-lot subdivisions.
I think just have it owned by one of the lots.
Okay.
And owned and maintained by, I'd say probably the lot, the nearer lot.
That's asking for trouble.
Yeah, lot 2.
Okay, so maybe we can just leave the lot up for you to determine later, and we'll have as a condition that you have to provide a deed or something like that. Okay. So we'll add a condition about that, but we'll need to refine the language a little bit.
Just with staff recommendation?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So moved.
Second.
I think we'll need a roll call.
Dave Iverson, aye.
John Trudell, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
Judith?
Laser eye.
Passes unanimously 4-0. Okay. I think we're doing the 5419, Accomack Way. Sarah?
Yeah, again, Dan Malloy, Sarah Eldridge for the applicant. So you just heard the presentation regarding everything with the subdivision that you just approved. So the proposal is the same. Obviously, the conditions we're looking for are the same. Couple of things just to go through based on what you're seeing up behind you on the screen, as well as some of the staff recommendations. So since the last hearing, not a major change, but we did, just for the board's information, we did shift the dividing line between the two properties here. On the application plan, this line had a slight angle to it up like this. Didn't change the lot configuration, doesn't change functionality in any shape or form. It just adjusts lot areas between the two lots. I just want to let the board be aware of that. And if that's agreeable, that'll be shown in the final plan that the board would endorse as part of the subdivision itself. Other than that, if you wanted to, I can go through some of the staff recommendations that are in for the rear lot for the special permit itself, because I think there's some there that we're agreeable to and some that we're possibly not, or maybe want to revise.
I think it would be wise to go through
Okay.
this.
So the first one's the existing mature trees. That has to do with the abutting property with Mr. Lowell, I think, which we talked about. The trees we're talking about preserving around the property line. And that comes into play when we construct our shared driveway. So we have every intent for the trees along the property line to be maintained, and would certainly consider a condition, whatever you want to word it, that existing trees on or along that property line shall be maintained. Or maintained and protected. And the second recommendation had to do with buffer zones and moving driveways. I think with the abutters in agreement now with vegetation, I'm not sure that number 2 is necessarily relevant any longer. So you will have to reconstruct the turnaround at the end, which doesn't really exist now. It just kind of wides out at the end. Certainly, I can tell you we're obviously going to save as many trees as physically possible. We do have to construct some form of turnaround at the end. And I believe now that we've gone over it with Mr. Lowell and which trees are staying, I think from the abutters concerned, that condition is no longer relevant. And again, number 3, again, comes back to do with vegetation on the Lowell abutting property. That I think the first 3, actually the first 4, all have to do with the vegetation between our property and Mr. Lowell. And I think now that we've agreed with him which trees, like I said, are going to stay and go, I'm not sure that we feel those conditions are no longer relevant. Number 5 has to do with the tertiary restriction, which we've discussed, so there will be no tertiaries. Number 6 does have to do with the sewer. I can tell you from experience, it being a private line, the sewer department will not issue typically a sewer connection permit without something authorizing it from the private line's owner. And it being a special permit, maybe there's some way you could word something in there. But I do know practice-wise how the sewer department functions. They will not grant us a connection permit without the owner's acknowledgement of it. If that helps the cause at all. And I think that's it for the staff recommendations. Other than that, the conditions from the previous approval of the subdivision with the dwelling count would remain the same.
Okay.
Yeah, so residential use only would be fine with, obviously, and then going for the maximum 3 dwellings. With 2 primaries and 1 secondary, as you've already talked about.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll open up to the...
Right, only last one, just to make sure we're covering it all, is that we're striking the condition requiring a shared driveway to access both lots.
Okay, I'd like to, this is a public hearing, I'd like to open it up to anyone in the audience that'd like to comment. Here's a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, I think we have the roll call.
Dave Iverson, aye.
John Trudell, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
Okay, motion. Anybody else from the board? Do we have to activate a alternate for
Yes.
special permit? This time, Cam, I'd like to activate you for this.
Campbell Sutton, aye.
Okay, public meeting closes now for the motion. Can you help us out with a little? I know this is going to carry over a little bit from the previous one. Do we want to run through all those recommendations and conditions that understand what I just went over? Or-
I don't think we need to go through those again, but before we move on, the agenda notes that Stephen Welch was voting on this, so I think he must have been activated at a prior meeting. Yeah. Which, to close the hearing's not that important, but to take the final vote is. So I think just including the same conditions as, you know, Dan just discussed, and as were included in, you know, the prior public hearing as applicable, because most of those were the same.
And before we make a motion for that, or make that motion, Stephen, I'm activating you to continue.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if I may, through you.
Sure.
So the only condition that Dan suggested waiving 1 through 4 that staff recommended that appears to have been addressed through consultations with neighbors and so on and so forth, that I have any concern about is that number 4, which requires a turnaround sufficient at the for a landscape truck and a trailer. And I believe that was a point made by one of the members, one of the abutters. So I just want to make sure that that's something that's been addressed, and if not, that we keep it in as a condition.
Holly, you
And we can
included
do that
that,
through
so.
staff.
Okay.
It works for you guys. I just,
This was a condition that was brought up by the abutter, Mr. Lowell. So if Mr. Lowell is satisfied with that, then I'm not too sure.
If I can, so there is a turnaround proposed to address that. I don't know if you can you blow up the end of the road, Holly?
Yep.
Right there. So what you'll see, that right there where you see lot R is highlighted, there is a turnaround proposed for that exact scenario. So somebody can come in there and make that 3-point turn and get out, as well as there'll be an extra driveway there as well. So,
okay, great. So we can leave it in.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, back to the motion.
Motion to approve as has been motioned through Leslie with staff recommendations.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Okay, roll call.
Dave Iverson, aye.
John Trudeau, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
Stephen Welch, aye.
Stephen Wagner, aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously, 5-0. Thank you.
On to where,
We're going on to 5619.
5919.
Brenda O'Brien and Paul Sharp, 8 Sleepy Hollow Road. This is a covenant.
Was this one
Is
approved?
there anyone in the audience for that? Yes. Would you like to say anything, Paul? Okay, thank you. Anything, any comments from the board?
So, Mr. Chairman, this is a secondary lot application. As with other prior applications in this area, there's a primary and a secondary that are currently subject to the covenant program, but they're condominiums. They want to convert those to a primary lot and a secondary lot. It meets all of the requirements, and we recommend approval in accordance with the conditions that are in your staff report.
This is a public hearing. I'd like to open up to the public. Does anyone wish to speak on this?
I've got a question. When
Do you want to close the public hearing?
whatever, however it works.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to get clarification. There's currently one covenant unit there now, or
Yes.
there's two?
One's covenant and one's market rate, but they're condominiums.
Thank you. That's what I wasn't sure.
You had this happen there before, another one.
Yes, this is the third one you've seen,
Yeah.
third or fourth.
Move to close the public hearing?
Okay, motion has been made.
Fourth.
Close public and seconded. Roll call.
Dave Iverson, aye.
Not all aye.
John Trudeau, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
Stephen Wagner, aye.
Okay, is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve,
Change that to a.
Conditions, and we have a finding.
yeah, with the staff conditions.
Okay, motion's been made
Second.
and seconded. Roll call.
Dave Iverson, aye.
John Trudeau, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
Judith Wagner, aye.
Passes unanimously, 5-0.
Can I just ask a question for that, for a second? Leslie, do you see, how many more of these are out there? This was done before the residential lot program,
Yeah,
never mind Daffodil.
all of the lots in that development, which was all done through approval not required, I believe have been developed, except maybe one or two at the east side of Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah,
Maybe half of them have come in and converted from condominium to secondary lot.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, both of the property owners have to be cooperative and on the same page and
Understanding
interested in
all.
doing it.
Right.
And,
But under their current situation, they're not guaranteed to be year-round, correct?
They are. They're subject to the
they
Nantucket
are?
Housing Needs Covenant.
They're still under that.
They still are.
Okay.
But they were created before we had the fee simple option,
Okay.
when you could only do it through condominiums.
And was there just a question for my benefit? Would the curb cuts have already been approved for these, or is that something later after we give them the tertiary?
So-
I mean, the covenant.
So Sleepy Hollow is not a road, it's a common driveway. So technically, all of those only have one driveway access, because they either have a driveway access off of Somerset or off of Marble.
Great, thank you. Next, 59-19, Christopher and Linda Meredith, 1 Wirrow Lane. I believe this was already approved in a recent modification. Is there anyone for the applicant?
What is going on with this thing?
No?
So, Mr. Chairman, I believe this is a conversion of an already approved approval required plan into a rear lot subdivision.
Correct.
There are several conditions listed in your staff report, and we recommend approval.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this?
Yeah.
Yes, please, come up and identify yourself. Thank you.
My name's Chris Meredith, and I live at 1 Wirrow Lane.
Okay.
I have a question about the rear lot subdivision. We're still trying to figure out where everything is going, and I didn't know whether we could actually cut the property this way, the opposite way that it's showing there, and actually just use an easement for our driveway from Wirrow Lane, or is the rear lot subdivision, do we have to have 20 feet footage on the road?
Yes.
From our property rather than from the easement? Would the easement,
You do have to have 20 feet of frontage on Wirrow. I mean, that's not to say that there may not be other layout options for you, but your surveyor would have to look into that.
Okay, I was just curious because the rear lot subdivisions, it sounds like it's a buried piece of land and you have to make an easement to get into it. But it sounds like what I just read here on the paper is it says we have to have 20 feet footage from the back lot on Wirrow Lane. But it seems like isn't the purpose of a rear lot subdivision to be able to get a piece of property behind that's not on frontage road? So you can get an easement into the back property and put
That's on some of them. It can be to not have to build a road. It can be to have
Can't it be an
So-
extended
Have to show
driveway?
a proof plan.
I would say on most of the ones, if not all, up until now, that the board has reviewed, there's been a narrow strip leading back to the rear lot. But in your case, that's not necessary. But if you want to continue this and have your surveyor look into a different layout, that can happen.
Okay, I was just curious about what our options are to make the most logical division on the property, so we don't have jags and jogs all over it. So,
20 feet of
I mean-
frontage,
pardon?
20 feet of frontage on the rear lot.
Okay, what's that?
But can that come from a shared drive?
Yeah, I mean,
No, they got the.
No, there's 2 drives on the if you go to the next plate, you can see. Yeah.
So there's the existing. And there's
Yeah,
your
those are existing driveways, so we were just wondering if it would be easier just to come across and cut the property right off the 7265 line and to get an access by easement on the driveway into the back property without having to cut the property down. We just have an easement through the thing, and basically we could push the footage down a little bit further towards that line. I was just curious if the law is you have to have 20 feet of your back property on the actual road.
So through you, Mr. Chair, you do have to have 20 feet on the road.
Okay.
But, if you want to pause and look into some other options, we could continue this to the next meeting. Because it's a public hearing. We've already advertised it.
Right, only if there was an option to be able to be approved for it, because otherwise there's no reason for us to even, I don't wanna waste your time, so. If that is the law, then we're fine with this. This is what we'll do. I just wanted to clarify it and see if there was an option to actually use an easement into the back property rather than having footage on it.
There may be, and you might want to explore that to see what fits your particular needs and the aesthetics of it, and yeah. But right now, as is proposed, we can vote on it, or we can continue this till the next one where you look to research that with an engineer or surveyor.
Okay, as long as there's yeah, I'm still confused by it. This is not my field, so I don't
Maybe
really
we ought
understand.
to come see the
whether
staff.
it's
Yeah,
something
The staff about it.
I think we should do that.
I
Yeah.
think
Not in a hurry.
maybe at this point, if you're not in a real hurry, let's continue this to the
You're
next
not building
meeting.
and digging a hole,
Yeah.
to
No,
hold it off.
we're really literally just looking to subdivide the land. We have 2 houses on it, and we can't take care of the front property.
It may be in your best interest to allow us to continue without prejudice. We'll keep this open, and then you can consult someone. You might find a better plan.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Yes, certainly.
I would suggest if you think that there may be an option, ask to have the public hearing kept open and stop in and speak to staff at the Plus building, and they can give you a little bit of clarification on the layout so there's a clear understanding. And then if it looks like you're looking at the site plan and you see that light bulb that works for you, you can then go to your surveyor and you have plenty of time to get it turned around and get it back.
I see, okay. So it's another month though, right?
But
It is.
yeah, but
Yeah.
That's up to you.
Yeah, but you better chance of getting what you want
Right.
Yeah.
than
Get what you
living in
want.
hindsight.
It would be more logical to do it that way. Okay, I guess, what do you think? You wanna wait? We'll have to wait then.
Okay.
can't redraw the plan here. Can't fix it here.
I think the,
But it's fixable, that's good, so.
Thank you
So
guys.
I'll make a motion to continue to November to the 12th, 14th. Okay, without prejudice.
I'll second that.
okay, we'll need a roll call for this.
Dave Iverson, aye.
Nat Lowell, aye.
John Trudeau, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
So you're right.
Okay, motion carries. We'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Next one, 60-19 Island Lumber Holding on 1 Colchis Road. Is there anyone here for the applicant?
Good evening, Dan Malloy, as well as Joseph Gay for the applicants, Island Lumber. So, I'd like to amend the current MCD. Basically, I'll go through the list, but some of this is housekeeping, some of this is also adding a building. So to go through what we're looking for, the original MCD was approved back in, last officially amended back in 2017. There's been a couple of modifications to it since then, and now we're asking for another amendment tonight. So one of the things we'd like to do is pull all those modifications into this new amendment, so it's one new document or approval. We've had some instances in the past where we do a modification, which is great. That doesn't get recorded. It doesn't necessarily have the same weight as the official approval. So we're just trying to pull all these things together. Second item, we're looking to construct another storage building. Assuming most of you, if not all of you, have been on the Island Lumber property at some point in time. So looking to build a new storage building down here parallel to Milestone Road. Right now, when you come into the lumberyard, you're coming in right here. This is mostly parking. Parking and some site storage right here right now. So what we're proposing to do, a new building goes in here. The parking that was here would be offset by some spaces added at the end of it, as well as more spaces up here. So we're not, it's a net zero in terms of parking. We're not increasing the use. We're not expecting the requirement for more parking. We're really just providing more storage for existing product. Also looking for approval of a 20-foot by 100-foot shed roof on the side of this building here. That's not enclosed, it's just an overhead shed roof just to provide weather protection, again, right here. And then, as I mentioned before, the relocation of the parking spaces. So there was 12 spaces here, we're relocating some here and some up there. And then lastly, as part of the construction of some of the other buildings, there's been some expansion. We'd like to get approved. The gravel area up in this corner was expanded in this corner here just to allow clearer access around this building. So we want to put that on the plan of record and make you aware of what's going on in the property. That is the proposal. It's essentially covering majority of additional storage area. It's certainly all zoning compliant, it's ground cover compliant, open space compliant, and meets all setback requirements.
Great. Before I open it up to the public hearing, is there anyone on the board that has any concerns or comments? This is a public hearing. Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this? With that,
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
is there a second?
Second.
So I just have a quick question,
Okay.
just because I think I know the answer. So the new building is gonna have the same corrugated exterior as the two buildings that run down the line from them, right?
Correct. All the buildings will look the same.
And then the one with the overhang, that's where the current sort of landscaping, like a feed and seed store is?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, I was just thrown off by the building to the right there.
Right. So there'll be a new steel building and a wooden shed roof addition on that, on the
Just wanna
storage
make sure
building
I
you're
was
talking about.
located correctly on the property. Thank you.
Okay, there was a motion made and seconded.
Roll call.
Oh, yeah. Close the public hearing, roll call.
Dave Iverson, aye.
Jack Wall, aye.
John Trudell, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
Judith Wagner, aye.
Okay. And now for the motion. Is there a motion?
Make the motion to approve the changes in the special permit stated at the beginning and the, new building.
With finding it, we also have a finding at the.
Finding, yeah, where are we at here? Where is that?
Does not affect the intent.
No,
Yeah.
just,
Come on now.
consistent with the previous approvals, where is that?
Second paragraph, come on
Is it?
now.
I'm looking for it, I can't
Fifth,
find it.
fifth line up.
Oh, okay, does not affect the intent of finding for the original decision, meets the intent of the MCD guidelines, there we go. That's my motion,
I'll second.
sorry.
And then second, roll call, please.
Dave Iverson, aye.
That whole eye.
John Trudell, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
Judith Wagner, aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to 61-19 Nantucket Golf, 250 Milestone Road, amendment number 14. Anyone here for the applicant? Yes.
For the applicant, Leo Azadorian, Blackwell and Associates. The proposal here is to enclose a porch area and expand the locker room seating. To put it all in perspective, the lot contains 10,890,443 square feet, and we're adding an additional 285 square feet to the area. No new members, no additional septic flows, no additional parking, is no change. It's just that the locker room area where the members gather and talk and speak just needed more room, and that's all. That's the proposal. The area that it's pointing to up there is already covered by a roof, so we're just putting the enclosed area underneath that existing roof itself. So there's really no change as far as runoff goes. It's already roofed over, and again, there was no change on the flows. There was no additional lockers added to it. A revised ground cover table was provided with the proposal, and It was an additional 0.003% square footage area added to it. So, like I said, the lot contains over 10 million square feet.
Okay. Before we open up to the public, anybody on the board have any thought, concerns? No, this is a public hearing. I'd like to open it up to anyone in the audience who'd like to speak. With that,
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
motion made and seconded to close public hearing. Roll call.
David Iverson, aye.
Matt Wall, aye.
John Trudell, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
Edith Schweitzer, aye.
Okay. And for the motion.
I'd make a motion that we approve the modification to the previously granted MCD special permit, and that we find that the proposed modification does not affect the intent or findings of the original decision, meets the intent of the MCD guidelines, and does not increase the maximum impervious surfaces allowed for the property, and is consistent with the zoning bylaw.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Roll call, please.
David Iverson, aye.
Matt Wall, aye.
John Trudell, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
Edith Schweitzer, aye.
Okay. Carries unanimously, 5-0. Thank you. And Judith, I'd like to note that
Thank
you're
you.
very good at following.
Thanks,
I don't have to remind you to
I was listening to y'all. I'm watching you on the computer too.
Okay, I have to recuse on the next one.
Okay, well, we're at 62-19 Mid-Island Service Limited Partnership, 41 and 43 Sparks Ave, and Nat Lowell will be recusing himself. Is there anyone here for the applicant? Yes.
Good evening, Kenneth Gullickson for the applicant, and Wally Sinclair, the manager's here as well if you have any technical questions. This is, I'm sure you're familiar with the property. It's a fairly simple proposal to replace the existing car wash with another one which would have a longer tunnel, kind of a mechanized, pull it through, everything's handled automatically type of operation. I do want to just go through the staff report. There are a couple of things I just want to clarify that may be a little confusing. First thing is the 160 square foot second floor housing. It's actually 160 square feet on the ground floor. It's an entryway. Okay. The apartment up above is 728 square feet. So other than an entryway and fairly small area, it would be entirely on the second floor. So the open space, the existing open space is 2,557 square feet. So it's really a fairly modest change. Sounds more dramatic, and the requirement would be 5,948, but it's a very small change in the ground from what's existing. And the waiver from, it says in here, the minimum yard setback, it's actually a maximum yard setback. In this area, you're supposed to be closer to the street. There isn't really a way to do that here because of the way the gas station is set up and the tanks. And it is two separate properties, common ownership, but they're two separate lots. And bringing that car wash down to the street just doesn't work physically. And then just on the parking, again, it's maybe a little bit confusing. There are 24 plus 2 smaller spaces shown. Some of those are at the gas pumps themselves, which is where most people park when they go there because it's a gas station. But also, you know, if you're going to the store, generally it's because you're there getting gas, except for the tackle shop. You could go there on a specific trip, but there are parking spaces allocated for that. So that's, if you count those spaces at the pumps and at the vacuums, then there's no waiver needed. If the board would determine somehow that, no, those are not parking spaces, that's for gas fill up, then we would need a waiver from the required spaces.
Here, I got a better plan. Oh, no, never mind. That's not it.
thought I
As
scanned it.
far as the underground storage tanks that are there, will they be affected all with the inclusion of the longer tunnel?
No.
Do they have to be removed or anything we would have to worry about with the EPA?
No, they're, I don't know if you can tell, but they're kind of in line with the existing gas pumps out front. You can see the sort of fill caps there. So they're not really anywhere, well,
To the right.
you can see they,
Yeah.
yeah, in that area.
Okay. Before I open up to the public?
I just have a quick question, because where the parking to the Stop and Shop side is, it looks like it is going the long way. I don't know how you'd call that.
Parallel.
Parallel. At present, there are air tanks there for tires, and most people come in at an angle, and I'm just wondering if that, if the air is moving, or are they, is it still gonna be an option for Angle to utilize those?
The air fill hoses will no longer be located at that location.
Will there still be some on the property?
I believe that's still under review. If they are moved, it would be somewhere out. I believe, do you want to address that?
Hi, good evening, Volney Sinclair, manager. We are in the process, we will be removing the air hoses to alleviate any congestion from the entrance area. The proposal is to put them in the back of the tackle shop. We are still working on a final location for them so it doesn't affect traffic flow.
Because those are very important, you know.
Yes.
I mean,
So somewhere over
without
there.
those, I'm not, you know, you're at Hatches with more.
No, we definitely will be keeping them there.
Okay.
So somewhere like over here.
Actually, right now, right by the side of the tackle shop, there is currently 2 air hoses that are there, but they're not in use. They were taken out by the previous owner, but the fittings are still there. So those are being considered to be recommissioned.
So on the back side, this plan isn't helping me, but anyway, what, railroad ties, right? Don't railroad ties run off the back of the, as you exit the car wash, and there's a parking on the other side of that? Do you know what I mean there?
Yes.
Is that part of your property line?
Right here. So those
Yes.
Yeah, those are the vacuum,
Okay, that's
yeah. And that's the property line.
All right, okay, so then it wouldn't be possible to put them along that line?
No, it's not the
Accessible, yeah.
the actual building itself for the gas station.
Yeah.
So it will be further down.
I have a question
Okay.
just from operational hours. You know, right now, it's kind of suspect in the winter. You'll shut down because of the freezing temperatures. With the inclusion of this tunnel, and would that keep it open longer where we'd have to maybe talk about the hours of operations?
Currently, the wash that we have operates on warmer days, days over 32 degrees. And it's only operated during the winter months from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. We hope to continue that trend even with a newer wash that would accommodate temperatures slightly below 32 degrees. So
you're not looking for an amendment to the hours of operation?
No.
Still 8 to 4?
Yes,
Great.
during the winter, yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I've got a couple questions.
Sure.
Through you. So I guess it's wonderful you're making some changes over there and you're getting some housing in. I got to agree with Campbell. I think, I guess I'm curious, what are the parking spaces up front? I see you have a surface, you've got plenty of parking spaces relative to the requirement. There's 24 being provided and you require 14. What are those front spaces being in, what's the intended use?
The front space is in the lower left.
Where the air currently is.
To the right.
Right.
To the right.
Line. Those would just be available, presumably, whoever's going to the tackle shop, but nobody else parks there as a practical matter, because you're
Okay.
either going through the car wash or you're going in to get gas. So only the people going to the tackle shop would need parking.
So, just having been there quite a bit, I'd suggest that you guys reconsider that in your layout and your flow. Because I think if you're going to continue the public service of having those air pumps available, putting them around the backside is actually going to create a congestion point. There's pinch points back there because of the vacuums and so on and so forth, and also people circulating through the parking lot. And then this is an area where, although there might be perhaps moving the air pumps a little further in would solve the problem of congestion, whereas moving them anywhere else on the site, I think you're going to find is going to be problematic. And I would just hate to see the end result of that be that it creates problems in a year or 2 or 3, those air hoses go away, because it is, I mean, a public service. I understand, but they are used a lot. So that's one comment. The other is, I would think that we, as per staff recommendation, we'd want to see a landscape plan, a lighting plan, update to where utilities are. I didn't see anything to indicate that stormwater is up to snuff, and I'm not suggesting any changes are required, but with construction work going on the site, it seems like this would be the time to review that. And if there are any minor modifications required, that we would address that. I understand this is an existing use in an area that's been known for this for a long time, but it is also in the public wellhead recharge. So if there is some issue with the stormwater runoff, I think we should identify it now and address it. And if there isn't, then we don't need to harp on it. And then the type, size, and location of any exterior signage, if that's going to be changed, I think that's one also in the staff packet, and that's an important one too. So thank you, Mr. Chair. If I get activated, I just wanted to voice my concerns in advance.
We're up next. Leslie, is this something that needs to be reviewed through our engineer, Ed Pesci?
My recommendation is that we do not refer this to Ed Pesci. I mean, the entire site is pretty much impervious right now, and they're only proposing to add a structure which is also impervious. So I don't see any significant changes there. I mean, they do have to get a certificate of water quality compliance. They do have certain environmental requirements that have to be met for the car wash and water reclamation and that sort of thing. So I think there are other bodies that will take care of that.
I mean, the hours of operations doesn't change. All exterior signs and such, I'm sure they're going to have to go through HDC for that. And obviously the landscaping plan that you brought up, Stephen, and the lighting plan, underground utilities. Is that something that we want to address now in specifics, or is that something that staff will be able to work with the applicant on that?
We're happy to work with the applicant. I mean, that's up to you all if you want to see another plan. This is an MCD, so you will need to sign a final plan as part of the permit. So you would have an opportunity to look at it then.
And just a quick question regarding lighting. All the lighting has to be dark sky compliant in that area, right? Okay.
Throughout the whole island.
Okay, I just want to try and avoid the commercial glow.
Mr. Chairman.
So I was going to say, if there are some questions and things that we want to go over that would help us with a plan, maybe a landscape plan, I think maybe it might be appropriate to continue this to the November 14th.
Sure. And can I make a clarification on the stormwater? So I'm not suggesting that there changes need to be made, but it's probably been 25 or 30 years since the stormwater system went in, and dropping a new basin in may or may not be beneficial because it won't happen for another 25 or 30 years. So I'm just suggesting, and again, I'm not suggesting this needs to go to our engineer, but that be looked at to determine whether, I don't even know if you have a stormwater basin in your area that you're doing the work. It's not, I didn't see it identified on the plan. So I'm bringing it up as a potential concern for you all to take a look at before you bring it back. I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but I think there's an opportunity if you've got shovels in the ground, to put something in the ground if it needs to be. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, well,
Mr. Chair,
yes, Judith.
I thank Stephen for raising those questions. I was going to raise them otherwise. I think particularly given how that site is so heavily impervious to begin with, and given the kind of torrential rain and things we're having, I think it's really pretty important to be sure that whatever the catchment system is, that it's working, and that you don't put a building on top of stuff, then you have to go take it apart and redo it or something like that. So I'd also want to agree that I think it'd be good to have it come back again so that we hear some of the detail once there's been further review.
Okay.
And I also thank Campbell for commenting about the air access, and to Stephen for commenting about how that will follow up the traffic if it's not through adequately now.
Thank you. And for the benefit of people that have come here just to speak on this, if there is anyone, I'd like to open this up to the public. Okay, I did that once before, and I didn't give the people that have waited all night a chance to speak on this, so we'll leave it at that. Is there a motion from the board? Anything else further to discuss? Or would you like to
Move to public hearing?
No.
No, we're continuing.
Yeah, we're continuing.
Motion to continue to the next.
I'll
next
second
meeting.
that. Till next meeting,
Till the next,
November
14th?
14th.
Does that work with you?
Can I just
Yes,
ask one question before you close?
Not close.
Close for tonight. How about that? Given the concerns expressed about the stormwater, maybe we should refer it to Ed for at least some level of review. Okay.
Helpful, I think.
Thanks, Leslie. I think that's a good idea.
Thanks, Leslie.
Okay, so is there any issue with November 14th coming back, Ken? What you're after?
Well, other than we'd like to get started, I would like to just clarify what you would be looking for from us. I mean, a landscape plan, there's not much there. So I think a planter of the upper left and really the street down below, a little bit of grass. But we can show that. But because signs are existing except for whatever might go on the new building. I mean, you just want something that shows the existing.
And a lighting plan, I think, too.
Yeah.
Lighting, placement of evening, the removal of the air hoses if you're going to place those with the traffic pattern. Obviously, we're going to have our engineer review stormwater management, anything that's affecting with that, with the extra square footage of the building that's carried over.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, through you. Ken, if I might suggest, in terms of signage, it can be very simple, just like a window schedule or a lighting schedule. You can say, ABC, put it on the plan, and just a brief text of what exists there now, so that when we sign off, we know what we signed off on, and it's clear for you all too, protects all interests. Doesn't have to be rendered drawings of signage that you might show at the HDC at the time of an initial inception or application. It's just simply cataloging what exists.
Okay, and could I just get a sense of the board? Would you be inclined to favor a parking waiver to keep those hoses? Because there's really no place else to put those spaces.
Right.
Aren't they over in their parking? I'm sorry, Mr.
They
Chairman.
already had one, they needed.
Yeah. Leslie, are they meeting or exceeding their parking expectations where we don't need to grant a waiver?
Well, again, it depends what you count as a parking space.
I think, given the way the relief was requested, you certainly have some flexibility. The use of this site isn't a typical use where you go and you park and you get out of your car and you go do something. I mean, you're typically parked at the pump or you're parked at the air hose. So, I think if you all want to make determinations that the parking is adequate under, certain circumstances, then you can do that in the decision.
Okay, well, I think the temperature of the board is more in favor to keep those air pumps. So if we can help to facilitate that, I think we're inclined that we'd work with you with that.
And I would like to say, I do think that those air hoses do bring in business to your, to the tackle shop that's there, to the gas station that's there, to the Quick Mart, and people coming off the beach, come in, fill the tires, go through the car wash. So even though they seem like a small thing, I think they have a financial impact on your business that's positive.
Yeah, we have no intention of getting rid of them, and we, as I said, we would be more than happy to activate the two that is currently already on the side of the tackle shop, plus any other spots that would be available.
Did I give you a good idea, Ken?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Is there?
I'd also say I like the landscaping in front of the gas station there. You always do a nice job with the pots, and the grass looks nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice job.
Okay, we are not closing the public.
So the motion a motion to continue till November 14th.
14.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call.
Dave Iverson, aye.
John Trudell, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
Am I activated on this?
You are.
Stephen Welch, aye.
Judith Wagner, aye.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, next one up, 66-19, Jesse Drescher and Robert Reed, 31 Young's Way. And is there anyone here for that?
Indeed. Good evening, Mr. Chair.
This must be the latest subdivision.
For the applicants,
Oh, she changed
Robert J. Reed and Jesse M.
The layout.
Brescher, trustee of the APB Realty Trust, Attorney John Brescher. So before I get into the relief requested, I think I'll do a very quick background of the history of this project. The current owner applied to the planning board in 2017 for a special permit for exterior storage and warehousing in a duplex use. The duplex use is allowed by right. The property was zoned RC2 at this time. The exterior storage and warehousing required the special permit. We applied to the board of the planning board. They granted relief. That special permit is attached in your is in your packet. I think it was last year, the property was going to be rezoned to C-Tech. The applicants decided to, at that point, said, well, we're going to effectively abandon the duplex use, and we want to put in what would be effectively a motor vehicle parking structure. So a perimeter plan was filed to effectively freeze the RC2 uses on the property, right, rather than C-Tech. So it came to the planning board for a perimeter plan, I believe it was either December of 18 or January of 19. The plan was then recorded. And so the RC2 uses have since been effectively frozen, protected for 10 years. Motor vehicle parking use is a use that is allowed by right in RC2. So since then, the applicant has applied to the HDC, has gotten approval from the Homeowners Association for the ARC, the Architectural Review Committee for the structure. And so in discussing getting a building permit, the zoning enforcement officer at the time, or a zoning enforcement officer said at the time, we think that you need to modify the planning board special permit in order to do so. And we went around in circles for a while saying, well, it's an allowed use. We're swapping one allowed use, the duplex, for another allowed use by right in RC2, the motor vehicle parking structure. So long story short, we said, okay, well, in order to clean things up, just to be on the safe side, we'll apply to the extent necessary, modify the existing special permit to effectively note that the duplex use will no longer be in existence. They're abandoning that for the use of a motor vehicle parking structure, which is allowed by right in RC2. and when we say motor vehicle parking structure, please take a look at the submitted HDC plans. That it is a 1.5 story, 2 story bays for parking cars. So we're effectively, to the extent necessary, requesting to modify the existing special permit to put the world on notice that this allowed use is going to be on the site and as part of this permit. And also minor site plan review. Since the planning board is the special permit granting authority, they have jurisdiction over site plan review in this instance to effectively allow us to site this structure. It was just for what it's worth on the site plan, we do not meet the threshold for the MCD. That was a concern, and I just want to bring it up so it is not applicable, as much as a portion of the structure is going to be used to hold mechanicals, and under the definition of gross floor area, areas of the structure that hold these are not counted towards gross floor area, which is the triggering amount for the MCD threshold. So that's what we are here for, effectively to the extent necessary, modifying the existing planning board decision and minor site plan review to allow for the structure as shown. One of the owners is here in the audience as well, as is Mr. Santos, if you have any technical questions at this time.
Thank you. Board?
I just have a quick question. Did you say that essentially the garage is, multi-bay garage is 1.5 stories? Or is it more like a salt box where it is tall on the facing side and then goes down towards the road so it looks more like a residential roof?
I think it would look more like a residential roof, plus the bays are not facing Tacoma.
Right, no, that's what I mean, like.
Right. Yeah.
Sort of trying to figure out what the 1.5 stories.
Yeah,
is for with a car.
Sure. I think.
Unless you're going to put your mask up when you get in.
Hi, folks. Rob Reed. If you don't mind, I'll explain. This is my building. Sure. The 1.5 stories is simply because the structure is 30 feet wide. Requirement staying within the building with Nantucket in mind. And trying to have a gable roof on each end. We carried a long gable and then broke that gable in order to try to stay within the HDC parameters. This was very well received with HDC. So a 1.5 story can be said. It's 23 feet high on the roadside, on the actual Young's Way side, and it's 24 feet, 11.5 inches on the main ridge, very much below the 30-foot threshold. And it's the reason being is very simply that the attic space is wide open attic space. It's not even designed for that. Okay, it won't be used for storage. This I feel like as if the language, which is required as a planning board requirement, saying parking garage, is what it would make anybody say, oh, I don't know about this in Nantucket. It's simply what I'm trying to do is have a place for clients. I manage a lot of properties, to have one vehicle and outdoor furniture storage in one bay. Done. And it's a year-round thing. However, the car's going to go in on Columbus Day, and it's going to come back out again on Memorial Day, and that's it. I don't want people on the property. I don't want traffic. I found that the duplex and watching everybody else around the property is a problem. My property's parked on daily.
Right.
And Tacoma Way is now a parking lot. I think that that's a problem. So I want to consolidate all of the parking and get it inside. And that's it in a nutshell. The changes, we're changing language. That's why we're here. By right duplex, by right parking storage. It makes it sound kind of scary, but it's really the way it's in the book.
But it is confusing.
Yeah, I can understand. There it is. And it's an 8-foot garage door. And it's actually placed to face back towards the east, and I think that as you come up with the duplex in front of it, this is all HCC stuff, so I'll keep it real short. But the duplex that is on the street at the previous, the lot prior to this, as we head towards Tacoma Way, actually will block most of this building anyway. It's gonna neaten up the whole corner, in my opinion,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Well, thank you, because I was thinking you were a mechanic.
No, this, I don't even want to put electricity in it.
Are you in the market
I
for
literally
mechanic?
gonna put,
No, I was just trying to, when you look at it, you're trying to figure
Yeah.
out what,
no, my goal is to put minimal electricity, minimal lighting, but heated storage.
Right.
Because that's such a big demand for vehicles.
right.
And then shut it down after Columbus Day and open it up again Memorial Day. That's the goal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. So I just would like to suggest to the members of the board that some consideration be given to the fact that when this was a duplex, particular landscaping was required along Tacoma Way. And now that there's a change of use, I would ask that there would be special consideration given for landscaping, visibility blockage between this property and the property to the north, which are two residences, and the Young's Way area, in addition to Tacoma. And then the other would be that there would be some clarification on the restriction on use, that clearly these are garage bays, but they're being used for parking storage as opposed to active use. Because it's not not to be punitive, but there would be a different set of restrictions or conditions, I should say, that I would think that we would want to put forth if they were being used in a different way. And it's not to suggest that you could never come back, but right now what's in front of us is that there's going to be storage. So I think it would be good for us to clarify that. Thank you.
If I
So
may.
my question, Steve, excuse me, is these existing shrubs landscape to remain, is that inadequate then for what you're asking in terms of, I'm just looking at the plan, is that,
Yeah,
are you thinking about more or?
I would suggest that to keep things consistent, whatever the conditions were for the Tacoma Way landscaping would be put onto a plan, and then a proposal of whatever you're going to propose for landscaping to the north and along Young's Way. And then that way the board has an opportunity to actually review it and sign off. And I don't personally need to see it. I mean, it could be through staff, I think.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, the prior approval required Leland cypress, I think, along Tacoma, or that's what was put in. So,
Is that what's
if you want
there
to do
now?
some, that's what's there now, yeah. And that does, and that does need to be relocated, I think.
It will have to be moved
Yeah.
with this building. We put it in, it didn't do well. We lost 4 out of 25.
Oh.
But they're actually in there and should grow very well when I get it set up. At this point, I'm trying to move forward now and clean this up and be done with it. So I may lose more. But my idea is it's going to be a 12 to 14 foot arborvitae. It's the green giant arborvitaes
Okay.
is what Linda had asked for on the last meeting.
Much better.
And that's what we're going to have there. They should be 12 to 14 feet. Frankly, I think this building would be completely invisible.
I think Stephen made a great point as far as the usage right now. It's going to be limited because it's going to be coming in, as you say, Robbie, a certain time of the year, park, storage, furniture, et cetera, and then the second time of the year coming out. But there are individual units here, and I'm guessing they're going to be separated because they are separate clients in each. So that opens the door for later on potentially light manufacturing, shop space, and things like that. That would alter the special permit, or you'd have to come in for that, because that changed the whole scope of the parking, the traffic, how it affects Young's Way, the road. So I think it's important to restrict that to the storage only that you are applying for. So.
Robbie, are you going to rent these to individual clients, or are you as a caretaker just using it to park cars?
They will be rented.
Okay.
Yeah, individually, they'll be.
And will you limit their usage?
As the manager of the property, we actually put away everybody's vehicles. We put away their furniture.
Okay.
We take care of all these things. I don't want anybody on the property.
Okay,
really.
that's just what I'm trying to get my head around.
Yeah.
That you're going to manage it. You're putting the stuff in there. They're not going to have a key and be coming and going.
No, that's something that's going to be very clear because I have to avoid that.
Okay.
I've actually created a need by having so much going on, and I'm trying to isolate it and put it
so
No,
that I
that's
can
great.
keep
The
my
neighbors
two
should be
people away.
appreciative of that. It's gonna cut
There
down the
was
traffic.
a storage application that came up a while ago.
Yes, Marble Way.
Correct. And there were a lot of
the
restrictions
other
for
one.
that. So I'm just, I'd like to kind of see, Leslie, your thoughts. You had something to say.
I thought that was a good point, and you know, there's nothing in the zoning bylaw that restricts those from being sold as individual condominium units. So if it's important for the board that this be in a single ownership and maintained by a single entity, that's something that you should include as a condition in the special permit.
Can I just make a quick comment on the screening, if you don't mind? Like, this is the good looking side of the building facing Tacoma. Steve, I know that you got your HDC hat slightly on right now.
I'm more worried about the property to the north.
Okay, because, like, we had a little wind in the last 24 hours, and I'm thinking, you know, we're screening things that actually look good. Like, why are we doing that? Like, why are we asking for screening for every single thing when actually,
Everything?
like, what's wrong with looking at a building? I thought that's what we do on Nantucket. So I'm just saying,
You wanna
as
break
far
it
as,
up some.
as far as, no, I'm not saying there shouldn't be screening. I'm just saying, this is our third one of these we've looked at. The third, I believe, right? This isn't going away. There's a lot of rusty cars out there in our beautiful winter, you know, we have. And I think that everything that's been mentioned is right, making sure we keep the future of what can happen here, where they have to come back for a modification, of course. But I'm just talking about massive trees get bigger, and, you know, maybe we think about that down the road, that some of the stuff, this building is gonna look nice along there. It's not gonna be like the doors aren't on that side of the road, is all I'm trying to say. I'm not saying we shouldn't have screening. I'm just saying, we almost like it's an automatic, oh, we gotta shade this ugly building. Maybe it isn't so ugly. You know what I mean? That's all.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll just through you. So just to clarify, when I talk about screening, I'm looking at a three-dimensional aspect of this. I'm not necessarily saying we need to create a visual wall between the street and the roadway. So for instance, you might decide in your application with your landscape plan that that is the most attractive side of the building. I'm not arguing that it isn't. And that you're going to put some London plane trees in, and you're going to put some abelia or some type of shrub that only hydrangea or something that makes it look more residential as opposed to a tall wall where we're building these leyland cypress and these arborvitaes that are basically creating a lack of open space. It's like when before they used to clear brush cut under the trees on Milestone Road out near the conservation land. You just felt like you were in this alleyway. So I just want to be clear when I'm suggesting screening, I'm not necessarily saying a visual block so much as landscaping elements that create a sense of place. Or in the instance of a residential versus a commercial space being next to each other, then it would be appropriate to have a visual block. Does that help?
That's exactly what.
I knew you were thinking that. I knew you were thinking that.
I'm just trying to say, we're building some massive, huge trees that have to be cut like a hedge.
Yeah.
I used to cut hedge back when Leo and Cypresses was still somewhere else.
Yeah, that was a good day.
Now they're the new privet, so, I'm just saying. So, anyway, very good, thank you.
Thank you, Nat. That was helpful.
If nothing else, I'd like to open it up to the audience. This is a public hearing. Anyone wish to speak on this? Yes, please. Welcome. And please identify yourself.
I'm Kat Robinson Greeter. I live at 42 Youngs Way, right across the street from this. And thank you to the board for allowing me to share some concerns that we have about this structure, the request for a change. My main concern is that Youngs Way it's a resident, it was planned as residential commercial, but the way that it works in the neighborhood is that the commercial is towards the back of the property and we have the residences up on to the street. And in this case, the currently approved plan has that same configuration, but especially with this being a corner lot on Tacoma, putting another, like, even more large structure than is already there at the back of the lot, which you can see because it's on the corner as you drive up Tacoma. It's going to be this big wall of building right on the edge of what I understand is supposed to be moving onto the residential area of the street. I mean, something like this seems more appropriate maybe to the other end of Young's Way, where it is more commercially developed, but this is the residential area. I hear what you're saying about people just, bringing your cars in at the, beginning and end of the season and leaving them there, which it sounds nice, but is that really going to be what ends up happening with this piece of property? I'm just concerned about the change of the residential feel of this neighborhood. And also it creates even more of a blockage. That corner, Tacoma kind of narrows as you get close to the turn onto Young's Way, and creating that big blocky structure there is going to make it even more dangerous as a turnoff, as the traffic is getting more and more busy because of the existing the health clubs and people using it as a cut to avoid the intersection at Fairgrounds and Old South and coming through this neighborhood. And I just feel like having that big long wall along Tacoma is going to create even more of a sight issue on that corner. It just doesn't seem to go along with the plan of the Young's Way neighborhood. And I think particularly because that's a corner lot, like if this was sited on, any number of the lots that are further up the street towards Old South, this wouldn't be an issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience? Anything else, John?
No, I just like to remind the board that although there is an RC2 zoning freeze, the town rezoned this to C-Tech, sort of suggesting that this is commercial.
Yeah, I mean, what's the ground cover, C-Tech, 30?
40%.
40, okay, I forgot. I couldn't remember.
Mr. Chairman,
C-Tech.
Yes,
I just have a quick question. When we're taking a look at this, what is the distance? I'm just trying to get an idea of the corner of the building to Young's Way. What is the distance from that bottom corner on Bay 9? I'm going to assume that's parking. I think that's supposed to be a car, but something, right, but.
So the parking is 20 feet long, to give you a little scale there.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out to her point. So if you go to where 9 is, what is the distance, not that 9, Bay 9?
So
Let's say.
it's 19 feet from.
Well, that's the parking. I'm just trying to get an idea because it's a building.
That's 10.25.
19 feet to the building. 10 feet and 9 feet is 19 feet.
Okay, 19.
And that's from the lot line.
Okay. Well, just was
For the
trying
record,
to
Paul
figure out
Santos.
to her
So
point
that's
on
10
the-
feet 3 inches that's from the layout now of Tacoma, not the edge of pavement. That's from the street line to the building here. This space is 9 by 20. That's approximately 10 feet. That would be just over 10 feet if you in that area also.
Okay.
And again, the street line though, this is the pavement line here.
Quite a distance.
It's quite a distance quite a distance away over here too. There's no sight line. There's no issue with sight lines in the area. The building is set back minimally 10 feet off of both streets.
No, right, I was just, to her point, I was just trying to get some information for her point as to, is there actually an obstruction by the building and a sight line if you're driving down Young's Way does it make it difficult to make a right onto Tacoma, you know, as a vehicle or a bicycle, if they happen to go that way? But, so that was
Yeah, and the answer
why I
would
was
be, I mean,
asking.
again, just picture
Because
your
there's
car,
the edge of
your
the
car is
pavement.
parked here, you're past the building when you're at this intersection
Right.
here, because that's the
Right.
curb line there.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience? Board, any other comments? It's the pleasure.
I don't think I'm activated.
Close the public hearing.
Yeah, no, I think we should, yeah, I'm just waiting to see if anyone says anything. No, I'm fine, I'll, make a motion to close.
I'll second.
Second.
David second, and we'll have a roll call.
Yep.
Dave Iverson, aye.
That will lie.
John Trudeau, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
Judith, I,
Thank you. And do you want care to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the, new project, the new site plan, the new building, with the conditions that were stated. And also, Leslie, is there any additional?
Single ownership,
Yeah, the single ownership thing,
restricted to storage and seasonal
the
vehicles.
language of that, storage versus, I mean, is that, we can fix that so that it's no question, right?
Yeah, well, you'll have a chance to review the decision in the office before you sign it.
Okay.
We can come up with some language on that. I had
Also harmony
landscape, a landscape plan.
with compliance with the approval, the
Yeah.
previous approval, 46-17.
Yep.
Also stated, harm, it will not affect the harm, the use and the harmony in the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw.
Yeah. And you wanted to include single ownership and management?
Yes, and also, the, you know, upkeep of the sightlines and when those bushes start getting bigger, making sure that that's, you know, not becoming something else in 5 years.
Will they have to come back for a change of use?
They would have to come back for
If they
a
wanted-
minor modification.
If they wanted to do
Right.
something different in there.
So, yes, I think if the board's concerned about that, you should put a condition that any changes to the approval has to come back to the planning board.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good call.
I would add that condition too, yeah. But I'm just thinking about the now, Pat, as far as, it's not like a homeowners association. You just wanna make sure that the right of way, full width of the layout is kept in, you know.
Sightlines are maintained.
Okay. The future of that area is not, you know, there's not gonna be a road through and all that. It's just existing use, but anyway, so that would be my motion.
Leslie, are you comfortable with that, or do you want to go over those again?
I think I'm good with that.
Okay. Okay, motion has been made
I'll second.
and seconded. Roll call, please.
Dave Iverson, aye.
That will,
John Trudeau, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
Judith, pleasure, I.
And it is unanimous approval. Thank you very much. Moving on, public comments. Leslie, do you have anything to add?
Under public comment?
Yeah.
No, but
Business?
we have the warrant article concepts. Do you want to talk about those?
Sure. Other business, we have preliminary 2020 annual town meeting discussion on warrant articles.
So you all have a sort of revised list in your packet. We've talked about these before. Changes that have come about since your last regular meeting. Under the RC2 phase-out articles, you know, we're working on those now. We are working on getting the mailings together to send out to the affected property owners to get their feedback on that. But we have removed RC2 to R5 on Appleton, which I think you all talked about at your organizational meeting. The Nobodier Farm Road sort of missing piece. I've talked to some of the property owners there. They're still cooperative with the rezoning, but they're still in the process of getting their permits in order. So I would recommend that we hold off on that. It was just a few properties. On the next section, the RC2 phase out, we've talked with some of those property owners. So we want to move ahead with the mailings on that, see what kind of feedback we get back. Same with the R1, same with the other. I think before there was a question about the Crooked Lane. That's a single property that's divided between two zoning districts. The planning board has tried to correct that when it comes to our attention. Several years ago, we did a really big article that we thought had corrected all of these instances, but we keep finding one here and there that we missed. So that's all that is. I would really just call that a technical correction to the map. For the zoning bylaw amendments, I think we'll be paring down the building permit application building code removal from the bylaw. I mean, it's a lot, so I think we'll probably focus on the demolition delay bylaw that I think is important to keep, but the way it's written now isn't really the way it's done. So I think that's more of a technical correction. The swimming pool allowance in R1, I'm not totally sure on where you all want to go with that, but we're still, we have the research, which I think is in your packet, that we put together on the lot sizes and all of that. Technical amendments, those will just continue to evolve. So we'll have an article on that. The open space zoning, which is something that I think Andrew had talked with you all about, maybe expanding the MMD designation to something else so that additional properties could be included. We talked with Emily Molden at the Land Council about that. And I think that's probably something that won't come together for this year, but it's certainly something that we should continue to work on.
John, can
Yes.
I interject in that?
Absolutely, Judith.
Leslie, I don't think you and I have had a chance to talk about it, but the Open Space Committee plans to have a report by the end of the calendar year, and we have two particular ideas that we definitely want to put before the board for action in the spring.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Judith.
You know that, and also for another update, I just flagged, because I'd like to go back to some other things about swimming pools. I'm not sure if they're health related or related to us, or both, but it just in terms of keeping track of what else is going on, and also to report that Dave can chip in on the city wants that I attended the Affordable Housing Trust Fund meeting this week, because they were talking about possible meeting articles and solicited their input, because wanted to have it to fold into the open space working group deliberations. So we're coming along. It's not as kept Andrew Price and this Leslie. Sorry, I should probably be sending it to you too. But the idea probably is to have a resource protection district as an overlay district, but with some particularized sub areas. So the Moreland district is the prototype. It calls for more intensive review for everything in special permit and site plan review, and the proposal is going to be to try to have something similar in character for intensified review for the harbor watershed area. So I don't know that Tucker's been staffing that committee. Megan's recently begun helping on that, and I've been trying to keep Andrew apprised, but I'll try and keep you in the loop, Leslie, and update you when I get back from this trip, okay? Thanks.
Sounds good.
I just had one.
Thank you,
comment.
Judith.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Would you like to just go over the remaining ones first?
Under general bylaw? Yep. So poles and wires that came out of the L8 project. Judith may have some sort of update on that. I know that town administration has that on their list as well. Noise, that's something that just needs a lot more attention than we can get to right now. And that's not zoning per se, but there's some zoning references in it. Streets and sidewalks, that's just FYI, that's something that the building commissioner and I are on a work group with some other town staff people on. The building permit section, I already talked about. Swimming pools, this was a concept that was not related to zoning. It had to do with the change in the building code that allows automatic covers instead of fences. We were entertaining the idea of trying to come up with a general bylaw to require fences. The building commissioner was just at a conference last week, and the information that he got from that was that's not viable. So that's removed. We had some HDC enabling legislation changes, which I think it may not be a good time to move forward with right now. And real estate, that's, again, something that's not specific to the planning board, but something that, staff is working on. So, and there will be other things coming up with that, I'm sure.
So I have a couple of questions.
Fritz, I believe you had.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to secondary dwellings. I'm not sure why that was taken out, but I've got some thoughts on that, which I want to share at some point, and so I was just surprised that that was deleted.
Okay, well, I probably misunderstood because I wasn't at the organizational meeting. And I, for some reason, thought that there was some discussion about not moving forward. But again, I wasn't there, and
Yeah, no,
So-
I'd
so
like
we
to keep
can
that on the list.
we can.
It was just not taking it up at that meeting because that was a very long meeting, so
Oh.
moving it over with an explicit understanding we'd come back to it is my understanding of what happened.
Sounds
Still on the list.
Okay, well, we can
Yeah, I
unstrike
think
it.
I think it wasn't like removed by a vote, it was more of continued, sort of, because of
Okay.
that. So,
All right, so it was my misunderstanding.
yeah. And then,
Okay.
in the, oh, sorry, Chris, go ahead, sorry. Just forgot what I was gonna say, actually.
That was my only
Have we
point.
sent out any notices yet? Like, I'm curious about Bayberry, that's like.
We haven't. I mean, we usually don't send those out until sometime in later November.
Okay.
But every year we say we're going to get to it earlier, and other things get in the way. But I have some time blocked out tomorrow, actually, to work on that. And we just got revised maps from Nathan Porter, the GIS coordinator. So I would like to get those out at the latest by next Friday.
And that would be the zoning map?
So as a courtesy, only for planning board sponsored articles, not citizen petitions. We send out a letter telling them that a proposal may be moving forward that may affect their property. It's a pretty generic letter. My name and contact information is associated with it, so they can call and ask questions, which no one ever does until right before the public hearing.
Yes.
We include some information about any changes for setback, ground cover, that sort of thing, all the intensity regulations. We include a copy of the use chart, and we include a copy of the map and the draft article. So it's a pretty comprehensive packet that people get in the mail. And we do get a lot of feedback from it. And since we've been doing that, which I think we started around 2005, 2006, this planning board sponsored articles have, moved through the process much more smoothly. And I think it's a good service that we provide to the property owners.
Okay, so what are we prepared to discuss tonight, Leslie? Just trying to figure out, are we gonna talk about like wall in it? That was confusing the last time.
I mean, remember, you'll have public hearings
We're
at some
gonna
point
we're not-
later.
So this is just discussion.
This was
tonight.
just an FYI, this is, what we're working on, and if you have some direction, or if you have other things that aren't on this list, time is ticking and we need to know about it.
Citizen sponsored articles to continue. If they're not on this list, continue because there's a deadline for that prior to our next meeting, so that that gets put through, and we can always add that to our list if we find that it holds merit, and we have a later December deadline.
So town administration has already asked for any preliminary lists. So they have this. This was in the packet. It was discussed by the select board last night. Citizen petitions are due on November 18th, I believe. It's November 18th. Yeah, the 18th. So they have until that time to submit them. I mean, the planning board has in the past taken the position that if it's not specific related to some planning board goal or something in the master plan, that citizens should submit petitions on their own. We only had 2 concepts submitted to us. The person was not available to come in and discuss them tonight, and I had advised him that I thought they would be better handled as a citizen petition anyway, just due to timing. So, we have until, the selectmen adopt the warrant, usually like the 3rd Wednesday in January, give or take a week. And they do like to see the articles in advance. So if there's anything not on the list or anything that really requires a lot of development, I would say at that November meeting, we should, be prepared to have a substantial discussion about that. November 14th. And if you have any ideas or any thoughts on articles, send them to me and Andrew, between now and then, so we can talk and maybe develop those a little bit. Or a lot.
So I just have a couple of things. I was going through this, and a thing came to me on the swimming pools, and I don't know if it's something that, but I thought I'd throw it out there in case it's something that sounds agreeable in terms of pursuing. I think we were talking R1, R5, R10, and R20, that perhaps swimming pools, when located, if they continue to be located in those districts, that they not intrude on the setbacks. In other words, that, if you're going to have a pool, then you need to plan on having it within your official buildable lot area and not intrude into the setback, because it came up the other day at a different meeting, and I thought, that's really, if you intrude a 10-foot setback and you intrude 5 feet with your pool, you're really putting yourself in your neighbor's yard, and I thought maybe that was something that might be something to think about.
I seem to recall we don't allow that. There was a specific part, of application on old something, I remember, and they were encroaching on it.
Well, they just did it.
We did not allow it.
So the pool itself is not allowed within the setback. It's subject to the same requirements as the building.
Okay.
Now, the patio around the pool is allowed within the setback because all other patios are also allowed within the setback.
No,
So,
this
I
was
mean,
at the
that's,
ZBA and it was approved, so, and I got up and said something about it at the meeting. And that's what sort of triggered me thinking, but if there's already something like that, then apparently it's still doable with zoning, special permit through zoning or something.
there
Is that
are
correct?
there are different requirements for swimming pools in the VR district, but with the exception of the village residential district, all other pools are subject to the same setbacks as the structures in the same district. Does that make sense? So VR has a special set of.
No, what you're telling me is that you already have something like that, and that if I want to put a pool within a setback, I have to go to the zoning and get a special permit in order to intrude into the setback, is what I'm hearing.
You'd have to get a variance.
A variance, okay, that's it. Okay. No, but if you get a variance, then it's allowable, and I'm just saying that it, let's not. Well, they did.
You don't have to lose
Yes,
sleep
they
because
did.
that's at another board.
No, I just,
Maybe you need to.
I really think that there is an issue here, and I understand that realtors don't necessarily recognize it as an issue, because it, in the bottom line, it
Hey.
affects their
What are you saying?
their bottom line.
I'm a realtor.
Yeah, realtors, developers and stuff, but I'm just saying that, other regular people may think differently. So, I was just putting it out there as something that I thought people might be able to gather around, but apparently they can't, so that's okay. The other thing I had was on the streets and sidewalks, I know it's not related to us, but I was at a public meeting, I think, where Nat was speaking, and he mentioned, it came up about lot lines and sidewalks, and that it's hard to find the lot line because a lot of the hedges and things have encroached on the lot line, so it's hard to define the size of the sidewalk and that kind of thing. And I think he had mentioned something about, at the time anyway, that maybe we should look into having some of these hidden lot lines on these properties where you're trying to do expansions surveyed, just so that they can be identified.
Is this about telephone pole stuff? I mean, I'm trying to figure out where that may have come out. Like you talking about like the 17.
I think it was at the,
so I think you, Campbell, sorry. The encroachment policy of the town is getting, I think, there's a sort of a policy, but it's not enforced everywhere. But there are places where it is. And Robert Neal is taking a sort of a fresher look at the ROH right now with some places, and this has been on our agenda continuously for the last like 5 months on the right-of-way committee. I think that's kind of where this is coming from. I mean, to get a real survey, but like, when a house sells, they're supposed to, under the town regulations now, they're supposed to be getting, like some of the stuff that's in the layout from historic purposes, they're supposed to be getting shown on their plot plan as like almost like licensed, like by the town, if they know that this is not on their property. That was something that was changed. But as far as what you're saying, having real surveys, I mean, that's something that's,
well, you said at the time it would be expensive.
I did say it, but it is going to be expensive, but they're looking at ones that are bad versus just anything. I think that's where.
Well, there seems to be a lot of movement on whether it's on Sparks or Williams or Pleasant, and there has to be encroachment in there because they narrow up to nothing. So that was just a.
There's so much to this. You gotta talk to like Apple or somebody like that with the 1799 stuff. There's variable width layouts, 30 feet. I was looking today, I saw some new marketable nails just off the traveled way and private property out into the sidewalk because of the way things are done, back when we were killing whales. So, I mean, it's just the way it is. I don't know where, I don't exactly know. I think it was an LA thing. I might have said something, but I'm just trying to clarify that. But anyway, can we talk about the R1 thing, or are we not prepared for that right now?
Can we talk about something else real quick? Because there's
pretty amazing.
There's some people in the audience that are here for something that I think we've had a little mix up between the posting and the agenda and the staff report about. So on the meeting posting, I think there was a discussion about an article from on Ocean Ave going from.
Yeah, that's what's next.
Okay, I have to review that.
So.
If we're gonna talk about it, in official capacity, I gotta review it.
If we're finished speaking about the articles, the next one on the agenda is 10 Ocean.
I know what this is. I'm gonna have to review it.
Yeah, they were just waiting for that, which I didn't realize.
Okay,
So.
Okay, well, then, let's go to the next on the agenda, 10 Ocean Ave. Is there anyone that would like to speak on that?
Maybe before we do that, can I just say that we had received a request to look at this as a potential rezoning. It's a small parcel It's at the top of the bluff, basically, next to the summer house, to be rezoned from LUG 3 to SOH, which would sort of match what's across the street. We are recommending that the board not consider sponsoring that. And if the person wants to do that, maybe they could move forward with a citizen petition. So that's where we are on that.
Is there someone in the audience that would like to speak on that?
Will you put up the map for that one? Or the plan, or, you know.
Hello.
Hello, I'm Danielle De Benedictis, and my husband and I own the summer house. And the small parcel of land that we're talking about is approximately 5,227 feet, is adjacent to our property. It appeared, encroachments on it, of the summer house on it, appeared in a 1980 plan when we bought the property. And our lender accepted a zoning opinion that it encroached there for many years. Recently, people, heirs to people who've owned the property have surfaced, and they've instituted litigation against us, for which we have instituted a defense of adverse possession. This is a property that we've been using. We've had people testify. In fact, Nate Lowell was a witness for us. That people have been delivering services to the summer house on this small strip of land back to the 1960s. And in order to own it in adverse possession, you only have to own it for 20 years. The matter is an active litigation, so I consider it to be very inappropriate for the planning board to be supporting one active litigant against another, particularly since we've been paying taxes, a lot of taxes on all the property that we own. For the 38 years we've owned it, and the people that are asking you to change the zoning were paying no taxes till the town instituted foreclosure proceedings against them, and they even have not to date brought the taxes up current. So I've spoken with Andrew Vorse about this, and he informed me that the planning, his recommendation would be that the change in zoning not be supported. Also, if you look on the map as to where Lot 10 is, there are two houses directly in front of it. Those were pre-existing former summer house cottages that are owned by other people. Those people owned that property, those two little houses, in 1986 when my husband and I purchased it. Any construction there would completely block their views, and I've been in touch with them, and they are opposed, and so are a lot of people in the neighborhood. So I particularly think this is something that the board should not get involved with.
Thank you very much. Yes, anyone else? Oh, okay. Any other comment from the board?
Okay, so we'll take that off the list.
Yeah, we don't have to vote on that. Did we just jump over? Do we have anything else to add to that, the town meeting, or will we finish with that as a benefit to the people that were waiting here? If not, I think the next is to set up the public hearing agenda scheduled for Thursday, November 7th, 12 o'clock at 2 Fairgrounds Road.
So, the 12th.
12.
At the last meeting, we discussed it November 7th.
Yeah,
Tuesday's meeting? It's Thursday the 7th. Yeah, it's Thursday the 7th, that's what you guys
that's what I have.
decided.
The non-public hearing.
Oh, okay.
The non-public hearing, sorry. Did I say public?
No, I think you
Yeah.
got it.
Okay, non-public hearing. Okay, then I'm right.
So the meeting, just to clarify, so the meetings are going to be
We'll on the tape, so we'll
Yeah.
find out.
Thursday the 7th and Thursday the 14th.
Yes.
Is
the
that where we are?
regular scheduled meeting is on,
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
November 14th. Yeah.
We can see the 6 as well.
Yeah. No. I just want to make sure we have.
And we do have the A&R meeting set for 12 o'clock, November 12th. Correct?
No, that's the 7th.
7th.
That's
You and I talked about the 12th today, but
Yeah. Forget the 12th.
Okay.
I wasn't at the
We're down
meeting
to
when you
2
all
days.
established the 7th,
The
so sorry
non-public
about that.
hearing for the A&R is on November 7th, and then the annual, monthly meeting on November 14th.
Does that sound
Right.
At
Yes.
5 o'clock.
Yes, we got it at 5.
5 PM.
It was 5:30.
No longer 5 o'clock.
We confirmed today.
Yeah, there was a conflict with the room. The conflict has been removed. So we're back to 5 o'clock.
You've removed the conflict.
How did you do that?
I don't know, I just like the way she
Follow
said it. I don't even know what the conflict
I
was.
think so.
Great.
I think so.
There's nothing else?
Move adjournment?
Hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
I'm just an alternate, I can't make that motion.
Do we have to roll call for that?
Yeah.
To adjourn?
Why not?
Why not?
Just
Yeah,
finish
no.
out the night.
John Shaw, aye.
Fritz McClure, aye.
All right, thank you.